we all want to be much more sustainable in the way that we garden. We think about it a lot more nowadays. But the good news is that being sustainable can actually also save you time. It means less interventions often. So a sustainable garden can also be a much easier garden for us to maintain. I'm going to give you 5 ways that you can save yourself time, but also save the planet. The first is watering less often. Watering well, but less frequently, will actually help your plants to be more resilient when drought does come, which it does more regularly, and then the rain comes. We just can't predict what the weather will do. But rather than watering every day, especially in the flower beds, pots will still need quite a lot of water. It's much better, much healthier for the plants to water them much less often, but do it really, really well. So allow the water to get right to the bottom of the roots, and the roots will grow down into the soil where they'll hopefully find water in the ground for themselves and save you having to do it maybe ever in the future. Establishing plants really well and getting them to grow properly, and that means nice deep roots, means you don't have to water nearly so often. Another thing that you can do to save yourself time is to choose the right plants for your garden in the first place. Rather than trying to mollycoddle something that doesn't really like the conditions in your garden, which takes an awful lot of time and sometimes an awful lot of disappointment. Having a right plant, right place kind of attitude when you first design your garden will allow the plants themselves to just settle in and be right at home, and you'll have to do very, very little to keep them happy and healthy. Weeding can be one of the most time-consuming things that we do as gardeners, but doing it a little bit less often, or doing it just in some areas and leaving some areas with weeds growing, is a really sustainable thing to do. There are lots of reasons for that, but one of the main reasons is that a lot of our weeds are actually wildflowers that have huge benefits to the ecosystem around us. So they really improve biodiversity in the garden. Lots of them produce flowers that are really useful or even essential to some of the species of insect, things like butterfly, bees, different beetles that will visit and live in our gardens. And if you have more insects, beetles, things like that, then you'll also bring in more birds that will eat those insects. So you'll really begin to build the biodiversity within your garden just by letting a few weeds stay. I actually really love mowing the lawn. I find it bizarrely quite relaxing, but it can be really onerous, especially in the spring and the early summer when it's growing so quickly that you have to do it almost every other day or every week at least. But allowing the grass to get a little bit longer is really beneficial to lots of creatures that visit the garden. They can use it to scurry through. It can be very exposing for something like a mouse to be in the middle of a beautifully mown lawn where a bird of prey could see it, for example. So having a little bit of longer grass will provide protection for lots of creatures. When you do come to mow it though, just please make sure you go through the lawn and make sure you've scared away all of the creatures that may be sheltering in there so that you don't injure them when you do come to cut the grass. One of the most negatively impactful things that gardeners can do is use lots of chemicals in the garden. Partly they disrupt all of the creatures that live in the garden, but also most of these chemicals have gone through huge amounts of processes just to make them before you even get them into the space. Now, feeding your plants can be really important, but by not feeding them, and especially not using chemical feeds, you save yourself time, but you also make the plants a little bit tougher, which means they're often less susceptible to pest infestations and saves you from having to use insecticides as well. Instead, just one mulch a year in the winter or the early spring will do all that feeding for you, but save you an awful lot of time and save an awful lot of chemicals being used. If you liked this video, then don't forget to click like and subscribe so that you can get lots more tips from me and other familiar faces on the Gardener's World magazine YouTube channel.